Hi listeners, Jason here. We're on the countdown to PHSCon in Sydney on 19th and 20th of June this year. It is the community event of the year for those in HR and safety who are progressing evidence-based practice for workplace mental health. Whether you're responsible for compliance to psychosocial safety regulations or driving your respect at work strategy, PHSCon is the place to be. The speaker lineup is unparalleled, with global thought leaders such as Adam Grant and Professor Rob Reiner participating. There's 8 international speakers presenting in person, 6 industry case studies from small to large organisations, and even a full 45-minute comedy set from Jimmy Reese to lead us into networking drinks. Now, if that's not enough, get hands-on learning from a choice of 4 pre-conference masterclasses facilitated by experts from Australia, the UK, and Canada. This will be the largest gathering ever on the topic in Australia, so get your bums along, make a few new friends, and soak in the latest thinking and application of psychosocial safety. Find out more at www.phscon.com. Now, on to this episode.
From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast, the UK one. I'm Peter Kelly, and with me I've got
Kate Field. Hey. Hi everyone. And I missed the last one, so it feels like forever since I've been on. So hi everyone, I'm back. Diaries worked.
Oh, so you feel better?
I do. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
We obviously in England it's bloody freezing, isn't it? Because it's supposed to be autumn, and I'm having to go away to Ibiza on Friday for my birthday to get a bit of sun.
Very nice. Good Lord. Look out, Ibiza.
I know. No, I like it. Like a little bit of rave every now and then. I'm 58. I'm just not dealing with my age, really. I'm just sort of heading towards oblivion. But yeah, I do like house music, so I'm going out to spend 4 days out there. 58 on Sunday.
Oh,
who'd have thought it?
I can't. You don't look a day over 21, Peter.
Thank you. I'm trying my best to keep it that way. So, well, now that we've talked about my holiday as usual, should we ask our guests to introduce themselves? Over to our guest, who's very, very 1990s hair and everything at the moment, aren't you?
You know, what's really funny is I am actually very much vibing the 90s today, corduroy skirt and everything. So hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Nicoll, not to be confused with Peter. We've blended our names together, obviously. So my day job is I'm head of health, safety and environmental sustainability for a culture and leisure trust up in South Yorkshire. And my other job, which is very much a job that I'm loving, is currently the president and chair of council for the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, otherwise known as IOSH.
And I assume you haven't done any executive orders while you're in that role?
No, I haven't got my Sharpie out just yet.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So let's jump in, because obviously that's the purpose of this podcast. You've had a lot of experience, and that doesn't mean that I'm saying you're old, but how important do you feel it in health and safety that we need to manage people's mental health at work?
I think it is really essential that we are managing people's mental health at work. For a lot of people, the only support that they get is through the people that they work with. From a health and safety perspective, we know that root causes of incidents and accidents can often be that people are distracted or they're struggling with their mental health. And that becomes part of the reason why they have accidents. I've been in businesses where very sadly we've had suicides, and having those conversations and being able to ensure that we are doing the best we can to make places psychologically safe, as well as physically safe, is really, really essential.
Yeah. And I mean, it is a sad fact that, we've seen a 25% increase in depression and anxiety and a 12% increase in suicide. But me and Kate have fairly strong feelings on this. We're still focusing on the safety stuff without realising it's both.
But that's the thing, is it has to be, doesn't it? I mean, if you are struggling with depression, sometimes it's not that you don't want to follow the processes, it's sometimes that actually you just don't care. Like, it's that passive rather than that active kind of desire. It's like, I actually don't care if I get hurt. Or I don't care if I don't go home. Rather than sometimes actively doing it. And I think that's something we can absolutely tap into, and we've got the resources to be able to do it within health and safety, whether that's in combination with our friends in HR, or our operational teams. Like, we need to be having these conversations. You know, Gen Z, Generation Alpha are like hot on their heels as well. They're far more open about their mental health, even than, you know, me as a millennial. We were probably the first generation that were actually able to be really open, or start to become really open and honest about our mental health and how we were feeling, and how work sometimes is a significant part of that. You know, I've experienced burnout, suicidal thoughts, particularly during COVID and during lockdown. And I was the one that was looking after everybody else. I was the one that everybody else came to for their mental health support. And I was like, I need some help over here too. The generations, they're coming in, aren't they? And they're going, I have depression, I have anxiety. What are you doing to help me manage this in the world of work? And we should be embracing that.
I mean,
sorry, go on, Kate.
Oh, no, it's all right. I was just going to say, I don't normally bring my day job into this, but just on that last point, we have just done a piece of research, and it was really interesting because we looked at those who started their careers sort of from COVID onwards. And one of the things they specifically said was, you know, they have an absolute expectation that their employer will support their mental health. And if that isn't happening, they won't stay. There's no loyalty. So they absolutely do prioritize their mental health. So I think, I mean, that's a huge step forward, that kind of, you know, they are more open, but there's still a small part of the workforce. It'd be really interesting to see how they mature and what that means for organizations going forward. But yeah, it's fascinating, much more open, much more expectant as well, which I think is really interesting.
I think as well, we look at it from the other side, of like the complete other side. You know, one of the largest generations we've known for a really long time is at retirement age. And we know that a significant risk, particularly to men, for suicide is around retirement, because so much of their identity is wrapped up in what they do. So actually being able to support staff who are transitioning into retirement or into kind of part-time work, or, you know, part-time retirement, and all of that actually becomes really important as well. And if we're able to not fix it sounds like we've all got a magic wand and it would be ideal, wouldn't it? But if we're able to provide that support within businesses, like from a UK perspective, we help reduce the waiting lists to sit and talk to somebody on the NHS. We hopefully reduce the amount of people who are in crisis, because we're providing them with tools and resilience and the ability to get those resources from somewhere else. And therefore it makes it easier on our NHS, hopefully, is the ideal world, isn't it?
It's that interplay between work and the world, the work and the community. I had to look up what generation I was at. So 58, I'm just in on Generation X, which means I had a BMX bike and all the other stuff that goes with it. Yeah, and no helmets when you used to jump over jumps. I'm lucky I wasn't a health and safety professional at the time. I was terrible at jumping anyway. But it is. I agree with you. Like, you know, people's expectations as they're coming in is they want different things, and sometimes we come up against attitudes as like, well, in my day, and the in my day conversation, I think is something that really has to be addressed. You know, my day was then. We're in a different set of days now. Because that'll be the next question, really. But go on, Kelly.
And it's that thing, isn't it? It's like, well, back in my day, nobody wore a helmet and everybody was fine. And it's that survival bias, isn't it? It's that survivor's bias of like, well, we all survived and therefore we think everybody else did. We didn't talk about it. People weren't open about dying of cancer, 30, 40 years ago. You didn't die of cancer. You died after a mystery illness. Like, that was a shameful thing. And, people are being more open about people who don't survive their struggle with mental health. And I think the tide is changing, but we also need, because, our older generations are usually in our more leadership positions and have been around for an awful lot longer. And if that is still the attitude that they have, well, in our day, we just sucked it up and got on with it. Trying to explain how very different the world is now. And, we used to get our news, 3 times a day? Morning, lunchtime, 6 o'clock, that was it. Or you picked up a newspaper. It's at our fingertips all the time. You have a direct insight into people's suffering all across the world. And that is heavy. That takes, it's a different level of weight that I think people who are empathetic and do care and do want to see the world in a better state, they do take that on. And that's a heavy load to carry.
I suppose carry on, but change tack slightly. I mean, you touched on it, and I think it's one of the areas that you may be focusing on during your presidency. But you touched on the fact that, sometimes as health and safety professionals, we are struggling with our own mental health. And yet, we're the one who's supposed to be supporting everybody else. I think that I'd like to explore that general piece with you, but I was reflecting on, and this is something I do quite a lot anyway, but I was reflecting on, if we look at the demographics of our profession, we have some challenges in terms of people who are in a position to be maybe having conversations with senior leaderships, or maybe from a generation that they're not comfortable talking about these subjects either. And then if we take it globally, that picture might be amplified. So I'd really like to kind of hear your view and what you're thinking about during your presidency year on this topic.
Yeah, so one of my themes, which I will come to in a bit more detail, but one of my themes is looking at mental health from a perspective of us as professionals, so our professional well-being. We see very traumatic things if we're unfortunate enough to be involved in workplace incidents. We are very responsible and accountable for other people's safety and health. And I think if you're doing this job properly, you care about the people that you work with, and when they hurt, it hurts you. And I remember having a conversation with a friend from HR, and she went, "I don't understand why you're always so stressed. Like, it's not like, if you miss something, it's not like somebody's going to die." Oh no, it literally is a matter of life and death when, with the things that you're dealing with in some instances. And it's like, and she suddenly had this switch of suddenly realizing how much responsibility and accountability we do take on. We look at it from the IOSH membership, just the IOSH membership stats. Over half of our membership is over the age of 50. And a completely different generation. With completely different views on how health and safety should be or could be or used to be. And that conversation is very dramatically shifting because it's the needs of our workforces. And if our workforces are telling us, we know how to use a ladder safely, we know how to use, we know not to mix our chemicals, we know, what we need to wear and how we need to do this. But I don't know how to manage that sickening feeling of dread whenever I get an email outside of my working hours. I don't know how to deal with all of this noise that is going on in my personal life that is having a direct impact on my ability to do my job safely. And actually, I'm not sure whether I care about going home or not. Like, they are big red flags for us that we should we should be embracing and looking after our people with whatever they need. You know, I did it when I moved here. The first thing I did was I created a support list. These are all of our local charities. So this is your local Mind, this is your local domestic violence crisis. You've got all of it as a one-stop shop. You don't need to go and look anywhere else. You can come and look at it here. And then also, we've got all of this information, you know, we pull together all of this information around really common mental health, unless, and we do them from this is information for you if you're struggling, but this is also information for you if you're supporting somebody else who's struggling. Because actually, health and safety is a team sport, and the health in health and safety absolutely covers mental health, and we can't do it on our own, and we shouldn't be expected to. And I think that's the thing, is sometimes people just expect us to be able to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves down, and just let an incident or let something significant that's happened kind of wash over us and kind of go, oh, well, these things happen. And how do we as a profession deal with seeing awful things, dealing with awful things, having to liaise with families and friends and colleagues? And sometimes maybe you've lost a friend yourself, or one of your friends or colleagues has been severely injured. And how we deal with that. It's one of the bits that every incident investigation training and all of that I've ever done, the bit that is always missing is aftercare. How do you look after yourself after you've dealt with all of these awful things? And that's why it's one of my themes, is purely because we spend so much time looking after everybody else. How do we look after ourselves, especially in an aging profession, in a profession where half of us are older, and how do we build that resilience in so that we are in a position where we can continue to care for the people that we work with?
I mean, I think there's so much there, but I suppose the area I'd like to sort of follow up on, because I've seen this a lot, and you're absolutely right. In our profession, we are exposed to so much, sometimes very obviously something quite potentially traumatic, but sometimes it's almost kind of a death of a thousand cuts. It's accumulative. And I think one of the challenges we have as actually in a number of professions where they are exposed to sort of traumatic or potentially traumatic events on a regular basis is that accumulative factor. So it's not often in the moment, it might be months, or more likely even years time. And I think, again, coming back to the point you made about the risk profile, particularly in the 50s, is that's a point where actually there might be more time to stop and think and reflect. But the big challenge is that they're not necessarily making the link to what they're experiencing and feeling in that moment to what's gone on in the years before. So I think how we start to educate and train and signpost for that, I think, is really critical as well.
No, absolutely, I completely agree. And there is so much support out there, and whether you agree or disagree around kind of the introduction of mental health first aiders, whether that's something that's worked for somebody's business or not. For me, I've been a mental health first aid instructor, and I think it's a brilliant way of introducing things, particularly not necessarily about fixing everything and fixing people and turning everybody into counselors and psychotherapists or anything, but actually teaching people how to listen, teaching people how to hear things that aren't being said. You're essentially teaching people to become more emotionally intelligent and more emotionally aware. And I think when we lead with that, I think we build environments where people become comfortable with talking about things that are often very stigmatized. And if they know that they can come to you and you'll wrap an arm around them and provide them with support and signposting, and give them the space and the support that they need in order to become better. Like, I think that really enhances our safety cultures as well. Because if I can come to you and say, I'm feeling really depressed, or actually I'm having this bit of like this thing's going on in my personal life and I'm really struggling with it. And you go, yeah, great. Well, not great, but okay. Thank you for telling me. Let's sit down. Let's have a coffee. Let's talk about it. Let me provide you with some additional support. Let me signpost you to something that might really help. They're then considerably more likely to turn around to you and go, Cal, I've got a real concern about how we access that area, or I've got a real concern about like this. Can we go and have a look at it? And that's what it's about, isn't it? That's it's building that culture. So you're able to make sure that people get to go home at the end of the day in the same state, or even hopefully better than they joined you.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the Flourish DX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow Flourish DX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the Flourish DX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
Consequence of put these things in is we actually do what we say we're going to do, and we're going to support them. And that's sometimes that's where it fails. There isn't an aftercare or after support for the people that receive the information, the people that give the information. So, but and good organisations put the right process and systems in place. Yeah. I love the fact health and safety is a team sport. Well, it is a team sport, but that's a good line. I'm going to use that.
These two.
Yeah. And going back to, we talked briefly about the lockdown. I had the same experience as you. I did lots of webinars. I was keeping everyone happy. And I was in a bubble of one because everyone around me was in with families. And I, as you will, if you look to any of my webinars, I talked a lot about the birds that used to come in my garden and the squirrels. I gave them names, everything else. So my experience with lockdown was probably different for some of, as with yours, or different people had different experiences. But did you feel that one of the consequences of lockdown is that we're more open now to talking about psychosocial risk factors, or is there more work to be done, do you think? We've got a podcast on psychosocial risk. So,
Look, I think the fact that you guys have a podcast directly around psychosocial risk is something that probably wouldn't have happened pre-lockdown and pre-COVID. I certainly struggled. We locked down. We sent everybody home with the business that I was working with at the time. We sent everybody home a week before because all sport got shut down across the world quite quickly. So we sent everybody home, and I had a glorious 6 weeks of being really creative and sending out, and creating these really interactive newsletters. And then sport started again, and everybody was looking at me of all the logistics and everything. And I was very much like you, Peter. I was pretty much in a bubble of one. My other half was a key worker. They went out every day. I suddenly realised why dogs lose their marbles when their owners come home, because it was like another human being that I can talk to that isn't on a screen. And was down south, and our lovely esteemed leader at the time announced the 4th lockdown, and I basically went, I don't think I can do this. I think I got a dog. I ended up getting a dog because I couldn't be in the house on my own anymore. I'm an extrovert. I get my energy from being around other people. I needed something. I needed some reason to go out and walk every day. I needed something that would get me up and be a bit silly and all of that. And I think one of the great things about it is that we're much more open about it. I wouldn't have told anybody. I wouldn't have spoken to anybody about how I was feeling before COVID. That kind of those suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. That's not the first time I've experienced it. It's the first time I sat and went, I'm not okay. I'm really not okay. And I think the fact that we were all talking about, well, actually, how is your mental health? How are you doing? We were having those active conversations. My concern is that we don't slide back. We don't go, oh, well, that was a fun 3 years. Right. Okay. Let's just get back into the real world and get on with it. We need to continue to have these conversations. We're sitting here as two women and one man, right? But men need to continue to have those conversations. And, they kill themselves at a far higher rate than women do. And when those conversations need to continue, I think COVID broke the back of quite a lot of the stigma around it. But we still got work to do. We should
And
be
all-
able to talk about our mental health like we do our physical health.
Yeah.
I've pulled my shoulder in the gym. It's actually, I didn't sleep very well because my brain wouldn't shut off because I'm anxious about this thing. Like, we should be able to just talk about it.
Absolutely. And I mean, let's remember IOSH has had 2 female presidents in 3 years. So I think, the ceiling is being broken. And may it continue to be broken. I'm gonna confuse you now because I'm gonna switch one of these questions around. So I'm gonna ask are the traditional risk factors in work changing, and are we now moving away which is like we're managing physical risk better? And in some cases, pre-1974 over 500 people died at work. We now have 140 people, around about 141, I think, who died at work, and the risks have changed, and the risk profiles have changed very much. The physical stuff we've tackled. Are they moving away, and is it better now maybe to also focus on the psychosocial risks as well as the physical risk, not to not do it, but to realize that actually, I mean, you've already talked about it. If you're looking at what happened in an accident, you're looking at the psychological and social factors that influence it. So
for me, it's both.
Okay.
That's a rubbish answer, but for me, it's still both. Yes, our numbers have dropped significantly since the introduction of the Health and Safety at Work Act, but also our industries have changed. I'm not saying that it's definitely, but our industries have changed. We're not as heavy industry anymore. We don't coal mine, we don't tin mine. There's an awful lot of the heavy industry we don't do anymore. And we've plateaued from our, fatality numbers have essentially plateaued. They kind of bob around 150 down to 130-ish each year. So there is still work to be done on that side of the significant injury and fatality causes. But the psychological risks, it is considerably more stressful. When I first started work, you had a physical desktop. It was a physical PC that I couldn't take home. Once I'd finished at 5 o'clock, that was it. I was not contactable until 9 o'clock the following morning. Now I have a work phone, I have a personal phone, I have a laptop, I am accessible. And that makes it much more difficult to have that kind of switch off. I'm not going to go into the working from home debate or conversation. I find a huge benefit in working from home, but also know I need to be in the office pretty regularly to be around people for my own mental health. And I've found a balance that really works for me. I think it has to be both. I think the more we address the psychosocial and the psychological risks, the easier the rest of it will become. A bit like I said earlier, it's that thing of we create our safety cultures by creating trusting and open conversation, having open conversations with people. And if we are trusted with people's sometimes most shameful thoughts and sometimes most shameful feelings, they're absolutely going to come and tell us that electricity, that plug's a bit funny, or that's not right, because we are walking the walk as well as talking the talk. And I think the more the more we are braver in talking about our struggles, the easier it becomes for other people to be able to talk as well. You know, you just look at it, just not little things, but you just look at Sir Chris Hoy turning around and going, I've been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And the amount of men who are now actively going and getting checked, or going in, they're having conversations about their PSA and going and getting that checked. You know, we saw it with Jade Goody, when Jade Goody, you know, died of cervical and ovarian cancer, and the amount of women who suddenly realized that going and getting that was actually really important. The louder we are, we talk about it in the presidential team, we talk about leading loudly, not just leading from the front, let's lead loudly. Because actually these conversations have the potential to save lives. And that's what we're in the business of doing, is making sure that everybody goes home. So yeah, it's got to be both. We've still got to fixate on the reasons why people are dying and the reasons why people are having life-limiting or life-changing injuries. But we've got to have these conversations around mental health and psychosocial risks as well, because nobody else is doing it. So we may as well roll our sleeves up and get it started.
And you're okay.
I was going to say, I mean, I think, you know, it's always where I've come from. I mean, I've been however many years it is, but it is about creating that culture of trust.
Yeah.
And you can't actually do that by doing an either or. You have to do the both.
Yeah.
And the more they're integrated, the better both will be. I think, you know, again, working globally, and IOSH, you know, obviously has membership globally. You know, I think there's different levels of maturity about where the understanding is, but I think one of the benefits we have maybe from being in the UK is we can help accelerate that learning and that change in other countries, rather than Peter and I go, it's taken X many years and we're just starting to have the right conversations. If we can accelerate that in some of those other countries, we're going to have a huge impact globally, which I think is exciting. We do need to be loud about it. I agree.
We've been talking for years, Kate. Disagreeing and agreeing, but always agreeing.
That's what makes it fun.
Always agreeing on the central stuff, which is regulations. Is good. So let's sort of over a couple of minutes. Let's talk about what are your priorities this year as the IOSH president.
So I think that feeds in really nicely to the conversation, the conversation we've just had about it has to be both. So one of my, and I'll do them in a bit of a slightly weirder order than normal. So one of them is around coaching skills for safety professionals. I have fallen in love with coaching as a route into empowering, into empowerment and really building a positive safety culture. You know, we do mentoring where it's like, here, let me impart my wisdom upon you. Whereas actually coaching is more around holding that mirror up and going, can you tell me, why are you thinking that way? It's being curious rather than judgmental. I'm a massive fan of Ted Lasso. I'm slightly obsessed. I'm very excited. Season 4 is coming out. But it's that thing of, and I think that's the thing for safety professionals is you don't need to know the ins and outs of the business or the industry that you're working in. Ted hadn't got a clue about British football. It's about how you build that culture, how you get your teams to trust in each other, hold each other to account, and build that culture where you are all working towards the same goal. And that for me is a really exciting kind of element. And then my other two summarize perfectly the reason why we need to do both. So my other one is working at height, in particular falls from height. The reason being the worst incidents I've ever had to deal with in my career have all involved falls from height. A fatality, some very significant and serious injuries, and which they have massively impacted the way that I do safety and the way that I talk about safety. And, you know, when you look at just even the stats from the UK, 50 people last year. It's literally, it's all pretty much one person a week, one family a week got a knock on the door from the police saying, your family member, somebody is not coming home because they've fallen from height. And it's one of the biggest, I think it's the biggest killer from a workplace perspective, apart from perhaps collision with vehicles. Yeah. Like it's the biggest killer across the world. Like, so we need to be doing more as a profession around nudging the dial. Because if we can halve those, like if we can halve that, like wouldn't that be incredible? And then my other one is around professional well-being, is how we look after ourselves, how we set boundaries for ourselves and protect ourselves, as well as being as open and as honest and supportive to everybody else as we can be. Not even necessarily particularly because of the traumatic things that we see, but actually, how do we deal with the level of responsibility and accountability that we have for the people that we look after and the people that we care for? So I like, it's a balance of both, because both are vitally important. And
practical and empathic at the same time. That's what it is, isn't it? It's the empathy element that we need to do that as health and safety professionals, and we look after each other, and and I know, you were talking about before, I've worked when we've had a major incident. I've worked in the team support and our inspectors when the incident's finished. So you have to recognise the impact. We're coming to the end, and we always have this last question. So one of the questions I was going to ask you, you've already answered, so I don't need to ask you. But
efficiency, Peter.
Well, we're still efficient. Health and safety professional, that's what we are. What if you were to take a look back, what would you tell your younger self about what you've learned in the job now? What would be the one lesson you'd want to have known that you've learned through your work?
Yeah, I think there's probably two. So from a pure kind of health and safety professional perspective, get really comfortable with saying, I don't know, but let's go and find out together. I think I think at the beginning of my career, I always felt like I had to know the answer. Like I had to be able to write, like quote legislation and all of that, like get really comfortable with the phrase, I don't know. And then as a female, as a woman in the health and safety profession, I would definitely have told my younger self, feel the fear, but do it anyway. Find it, make a seat at the table, and don't apologize for it.
Well, you are now top of the table, Kelly.
I was still pinching myself. I was still pinching myself, but yeah.
I mean, I just think, it's an incredible when you think back, and actually, the issues that you're bringing are the issues of the day. But you're bringing them with the life experiences and your own experience through the health and safety world. So I think that's amazing. And we've come to the end
already. It goes so quickly every time.
Every time. So it leaves me just to say, well, thank you very much for coming on to the UK Psych Health and Safety podcast. For our listeners, you can get this on a range of podcast platforms, or if you particularly want to see us again, on YouTube. So thank you once again, Kelly, and then that's it.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.